Judges, would you please introduce yourselves?
Hi, my name is Marcia Holland. I'll be serving as the chief judge for this hearing. I'm an attorney in Missoula, Montana. I used to be a career public defender in Fairbanks, Alaska, but moved to Montana, back to Montana. Now I teach at the law school here. And I really look forward to hearing from you all. I just finished 9 Zoom mock trials. So I'm so glad that we, the people, can continue in this format and we can participate, or you can participate, since it's such a valuable program. So thank you for being here.
Thank you. Good afternoon. My name is Becca Steinhoff. I am in Casper, Wyoming. I am the executive director of the John P. L. Bogan Foundation, and I'm also very much looking forward to hearing from you today.
Thank you.
Hello, everyone. My name is Scott Barnhart. I'm currently in Indianapolis, Indiana. I'm an attorney that works at the Indiana Attorney General's office, and I do consumer protection law. I'm looking forward to hearing what you have to say today.
Thank you very much.
And if you can introduce yourself and acknowledge any teacher, mentor, or coach that might have helped you get here.
I am Levi Peterson. I'm a senior here at Green River High School.
I am Emma Christiansen. I am also a senior here.
I'm James King, also a senior and also from Green River High School.
And our We the People teacher is Brad Cox, and he's done a wonderful job helping us prepare for today.
Thank you so much. And as you know, it's Unit 6, Question 1. Thomas Hobbes noted that life in a state of nature is solitary, poor, nasty, brutish, and short. How has the human condition changed over time? And how is that change reflected in our expectations of government? Should the principles of natural rights or classical republicanism guide policy changes designed to improve the conditions of all people? What are the most pressing domestic and global challenges facing Americans today and in the future? What policies can you suggest to address them? And you may begin. Thank you.
As society progresses, the way individuals and societies interact also change. The idea is that the state of nature has become commonly known theory. However, few states of nature have occurred.
Humans naturally gravitate towards a state of order, creating society and eventually governance. In the current world, the US has a strongly established governmental system, and so states of nature are almost exclusively viewed in more third world countries, and are often caused not by individuals harming one another, but rather government systems fighting for power.
In these cases, the government has become the strong within the state of nature. The idea of natural order evolving to encompass groups rather than individuals. A true state of nature with each man for himself isn't one which is commonly proliferated in today's world.
We have not been in fear of a true state of nature within the United States for long enough that it is no longer a primary driving factor in our expectations of our government.
When it comes to the many other aspects of the human conditions, the differences between modern times and ancient ones are clear to see.
Parts of our lives, like technology and social connection, have formed new practices that dictate the way in which we address governance.
We now not only have broader expectations of government, but also have a different perspective on its moral duty and how its processes should be conducted. The government has expanded its power, and all branches have been given further powers than what were originally included in their creation.
Citizens have also begun representing themselves through social media, and technological advances affect how people and individuals engage in politics. In addition, rights have been expanded to further groups since their original institution in the Constitution.
In order to create a well-balanced system, it is important to take into account both natural rights and classical republicanism. Within general standards, there is a set of concepts most reasonable people would deem as inherently necessary to an individual's autonomy.
These concepts are often those which would guide us away from a state of nature and towards a cohesive society. Natural rights can be derived from these concepts, making it possible to begin with the primary set of central rights necessary for the conduct of a government.
With this basis of natural rights, then classical republicanism must be taken into account. While keeping an intact version of those rights as a guiding factor, new legislation and policies must be put into place based on the will of the governed.
The governed who would also therefore be rightfully endowed to remove said government if it does not meet the will of the governed or was violating the natural rights upon which it was founded. This provides for the most reliable representation of a citizen's wills while still preventing majority rule from becoming unreasonable. It also makes it possible to provide new interpretations of rights and expansions of rights to new groups.
There are a great deal of matters, both global and domestic, that face our country today. When it comes to domestic concepts, there have been many issues in bipartisan political divides, causing dissent in the national order.
This is an issue that cannot be solved through legislation, and instead must be addressed through overall cooperation and compromise between parties. We can also see contentious domestic issues such as gun control, the legalization of substances, and police reform, among many others.
Policies must be implemented that will address concerns of all sides and provide better overall social standards. Some possible policy changes include regulation of ammo, state distinctions on certain drug use, and further training for criminal justice officers.
Globally, the most prevalent issue is that of the coronavirus. However, as vaccines are being produced, the problems integral to the disease are being mitigated.
All issues must be reviewed and addressed with cooperation and consideration to natural rights and the wishes of the governed in order to form a more perfect union.
Thank you. Becca, I think you're up.
Well, thank you. I want to start with a question. You talked a lot about the will of the governed. How is it that we know what the will of the governed is? And in particular, as we begin to address equity issues across the nation and the globe, how do we ensure that the voices of all are carried forward to really understand what the will of the governed is?
Well, there have been a lot of issues throughout time of figuring out what the will of the governed is, and a lot of debate over what the best way to do this is. And what we've landed upon within our government most often is representation. So the voting in of representatives is the best way that we have found as a nation to represent the will of the people within it.
Now, we do understand the problem with this idea of representation into party systems, as we mentioned, the bipartisanism of the United States, and how these we've generalized a massive amount of people's moral views and their political opinions into essentially only two options, which is one of the problems that we have, and why we don't see perfect representation in the nation.
And even beyond legislation, we still can see the will of the governed. Take, for example, the civil rights movement. At this moment, there wasn't much legislation that aided in those that were participating in civil rights, but the majority of the people wanted to stand up for what they believed in and what they believed the American people should represent, and therefore generated a positive response to this issue.
Thank you.
I'm interested in hearing more about your views on technology and whether you see technology as an asset or as a burden in addressing some of these issues you've been discussing.
Technology, I think, is one of the biggest assets we have today. It helps connect us all more thoroughly. And at the beginning of our paper, we introduced the idea of most of our natural states come from warring governments over each other. And the best way to share awareness from this is by posting and sharing and helping each other understand what's going on in these countries. Because before the time of the internet, how were the people supposed to recognize atrocities that were being committed across seas or in other nations? They couldn't, but now with the internet, we have the ability to share this.
Obviously, there are positives and negatives of technology, but it's shown us many different ways to be able to look at the perspectives of the people and the perspectives of other nations. And so, while technology does have its downsides, and there are certain areas that still need regulation that we haven't quite gotten to yet within our nation, there are many positives that we can't overlook.
And it's quite interesting looking at the growing technology and especially the social side of it, and how we essentially have this new branch of global governance, which is public opinion. If we see a government massacring its people, we have this governing system of global opinion where you will have a massive amount of people from influential nations causing actions in these foreign governments, in these foreign states, saying and demanding things for other people from the community of the entire world, because these social platforms are shared and connected. So we do have this, and it's not like defined in any means. There's not going to be definite action taken by individuals with this massive outcry from these atrocities, but it is something that is being taken into account by those who do represent individuals.
So on a related note then, because we in the United States can generally see what's happening in so many places in the world, what should the US role be in providing support or aid or even diplomatic relationships with countries where their citizens are not treated as we would want our citizens to be treated? For example, should we continue with some type of relationship with China versus some type of relationship with North Korea? Where should the balance be struck?
So I think it's very important to keep a foothold in a lot of places in the planet, because that is essentially how we're seeing nations grow more and more now. So if the United States doesn't have some kind of foothold in an amount of other nations, we're going to see the growth of, as you mentioned, China, and they are actually taking those the countries alongside Eastern Africa and other countries and trying to take those into essentially their fold, or trying to capture those economies. So we do need to have some sort of implementation of the United States in these other countries, preferably helping them.
However, we must keep from becoming the strong within the state of nature. We can't become the bully within the state of nature that some may become, but we also can't allow others to do this. So we must try to maintain a state of order without creating a regime of totalitarianism in some senses.
We must maintain a balance between these two ideas that they presented. We don't want to overstep our boundaries, because that could lead to more people being hurt. That could lead to wars. That could lead to lots of bad things occurring. But we do want to maintain a presence, because as long as the United States has a presence in these oppressed countries, there's going to be a sense of hope. American products are number one way to represent this. If people can see what good comes out of these products, then there's going to be hope, and there's going to be sense that life can get better.
Also, it's always more effective if the US doesn't work on its own. So things like the United Nations is incredibly helpful in these pursuits.
And lastly, we also have, if you've looked a little into question 2 of this topic about the industrial complex, we often see a negative light on the United States interfering with other nations. And that is because of this industrial complex that is gone into question 2 that was made very powerful during the Cold War. So we need to essentially restructure how we functionally help other nations, not by sending in men with guns, but helping with infrastructure and attempting to help out the right governments with the wills of the people.
Shifting gears just a little bit, I'm curious as to your insights on if education has a role in advancing the human condition. And based on that response, what is the government's role in providing education to the people within their purview?
Well, advancing education and making sure people are more educated does help with keeping us in a state of order and away from this idea of a state of nature. And so we do need to make sure that we are educating individuals, but not to the extent that we are violating any sort of right to their own beliefs.
Yeah, education is overall beneficial for a country, and especially, but actually we see more benefit coming from richer countries with this education systems. And if we're looking at implementation of education to other, if we're looking at the implementation from the United States to other countries of education, we need to make sure that we're not trying to influence those nations or come up with our education system into theirs. Of course, STEM is pretty universal, so like maths and sciences, but a lot of cultural teachings and things need to be implemented from, as you mentioned, those who are going to be taught it, those who are going to be teaching it, and those who make those regulations for that education.
How do we do that and not impede upon? Oh, she's going to fight.
Time.
Never enough time to answer these questions.
Okay,
That's a good thing, because that sounded like a difficult one.
we'll take a deep breath. We'll provide a few comments, and then congratulations for being a successful Unit 6 team.
Thank you.
I'm just going to look at my notes. Oops, I have to no. I really liked how you started your prepared remarks in moving from a state of nature to graduating to a state of order. And I thought that was a very good use of language to explain what these concepts are about. And then you expanded to further groups and different ways that these different balances between states of nature and states of order and protection of individual rights are all a complex web that are trying to be balanced. So thank you so much for the depth of your thoughtfulness for trying to answer what I think is one of the harder questions I've seen for Unit 6 in a while. And I've been helping with We the People for a while. And then one thing I really want to appreciate, the concept of the sense of hope, that sometimes what's really important in the United States' role as a global leader is to provide that sense of hope. And that just really resonated with me. So thank you for being so thoughtful in answering that particular question. Good job.
Thank you.
I would echo a lot of what Marcia says. In particular, this idea of hope really resonating. And I feel more hopeful after listening to you. I also just felt like you took a really balanced approach to this in the sense that you acknowledged the challenges and the dynamics and the difficulties of some of this, but kind of stayed true to that theme of state of order, which requires cooperation, and really wove that throughout your initial prepared essay and then into those question responses. And I thought that worked really well and was great. If I had one suggestion, it would be to integrate some additional examples into your responses. I think you had really excellent responses, and they would have been just a little bit better if you added the context to a particular event, either historic or current, that would have just kind of bolstered the evidence for that. But I thought you were really thoughtful in how you approach some of this. And truly, the word that just keeps coming to my mind is balanced. Like you put that all the way through your essay and into your responses, but you conducted yourselves in a way that also really implied and articulated that. And so it was very well done. You took the time to prepare, and that showed up in every way. So we are grateful for your deep thought and ultimately the hope that you have gifted. So thank you.
Thank you.
I agree. I think you all are particularly polished and confident group, right? So, and it comes across in your presentation. I think, you understand this material very, very well. I really appreciated your interjection of morality into this discussion. I mean, you touched upon it a little briefly. And I also the suggestion that some of these problems cannot be solved through legislation alone is going to give me some thought I'm going to think about for a while. If I had constructive feedback, I would, your example of the UN is a good one, but think about in terms of that, there's a balance there between national sovereignty and the power and the authority the UN has. So, think about that discussion in terms of filling out your answer, but very well done. Good job.
Thank you.
Thank you for being here.